Hi everyone, Brianna Dignard here, and welcome back to my channel. If you're a fellow sewer, or if you have friends or family that like to sew, then you probably know what happens. As a sewer, you tend to accumulate a large fabric stash. It just happens. I don't know how it happens, but next thing you know, you got piles and piles of fabric in your room and you're trying to figure out what to do with it. And to some people, this is a problem, or at least it is to my husband. Every single time I'm heading out the door saying I'm on my way to Joann's again, he's asking, does she really need any more fabric? So today I thought, what better way to use up my fabric stash than to make a pillow in the shape of an animal cell. You'll get to learn a little bit about cell parts and functions, learn how to make a really cute animal cell pillow if that's something you want to decorate your house with, and I'll have a really cute animal cell pillow to decorate my house with. All right, there's no time like the present. Let's go get started. All right, so I have gathered everything we're gonna need for this project after reading my fabric stash. You're going to need, if you're following along with me, 7 various just small scraps of fabric that are making up our cell parts or organelles, as well as 2 larger pieces of fabric that's going to be for the outer and main part of the pillow. So it needs to be big enough to be the full size of your pillow. I am using mainly cotton here because that's just mostly what I have in my fabric stash. But if you want to make something that's really cuddly or have something that's not going to end up fraying around the edges, you can use felt or fleece, and that'll also make a really cute pillow. I have a big bag of polyfill to fill it up, and then some paper and pen to make our pattern pieces, along with some embroidery floss, some needles, normal scissors, fabric scissors, and some pins, and then my sewing machine in the background. If you don't want to sew or can't sew or are too lazy to sew, you can also hot glue this project and it should turn out just fine. Cells are the basic units of all living things. That means that if I were to break you down into the smallest piece imaginable, part of you that could still be alive, that would be one cell. Today, like I mentioned, we're going to be making an animal cell pillow. And the first thing we need to do is have a pattern. So animal cells are circular in shape. So we're gonna draw a circle on these pieces of paper. And I forgot my tape. What I like to do to make patterns is tape a bunch of scrap pieces of paper together and then draw out my circle. So let me go grab tape real quick. So I'm going to just very loosely tape these together. You can also bring in like a pillow for reference about what size you want to make it. So this would fit well on this pattern piece. So I'm just gonna draw kind of a big circular round object. It doesn't have to be perfect. Ooh, that might actually be a little bit too big. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Whoop! Good enough. And then we're just gonna go ahead and cut that out. All right, so I have my completed circular-ish cell pattern. So what we need to do with this is actually cut out 2 different cell parts. And that's one for the cell membrane and for the cytoplasm. Now the cell membrane of a cell basically separates the inside of the cell from the outside of the cell. It lets stuff go in and out, and it basically makes the cell a cell. So that is going to be kind of what the outer portion of our cell is going to be like. And then the cytoplasm is basically the filling of the cell. So it's all the liquidy jelly stuff that's inside of a cell that keeps it inflated versus just being a bunch of organelles crashing into each other. I swear whenever we used to do cell model projects in school and we were allowed to make them edible, somebody always made a jello cell, and the jello, big part of the jello was the cytoplasm. I don't really care though, because we always got to eat the edible projects. So what we need to do first is I'm gonna start out by cutting out our cell membrane. So I'm gonna use this type of fabric right here. That's what I've chosen, nice plaid. And I'm gonna lay down my pattern piece in the corner of it. And I'm feeling on the edge today. No, that probably didn't come out right. I'm feeling wild today. So I'm not gonna pin it down. I'm just gonna smooth it out and cut it. The other piece we're going to need cut out of our cell membrane fabric is just a long strip, kind of rectangular strip, which is gonna make our pillow more dimensional. We're gonna cut another circle out of our cytoplasm fabric, but if we just sew 2 circles on top of each other and then turn them inside out, it's gonna be like, it's not gonna be very cuddly or very 3-dimensional. So we need something that adds depth to our pillow. So I'm gonna cut out just a long rectangular strip of fabric that is a couple inches wide. There's our nice strip of fabric. So that makes up our cell membrane, and we don't need that yet until we're gonna put our cell together. So I'm gonna place this fabric off to the side. We're gonna mostly be working with the cytoplasm piece today because that's where all of the cell parts, or again, organelles, are located. All right, we have our cytoplasm piece. Now let's start adding some organelles to our cell. All right, I got all of my cell organelle fabric here, and we're gonna first start off with the nucleus of the cell. Now the nucleus is the brain or control center of the cell, and it contains the DNA, RNA, and the stuff that contains the information that tells the cell what to do and what type of cell it's gonna be. For example, like it has information whether a cell is gonna be a fat cell or a muscle cell or a brain cell. All of that and all of the instructions for the operation of the cell are contained in the nucleus. For whatever reason, I feel like the nucleus should be blue, so I'm gonna make it out of this, I think, denim fabric. And the nucleus is kind of a round circular object near the center of the cell, so I'm just gonna cut out a circular blobby thing. Spoiler alert, most cell organelles are either circular blobby things or tubey blobby things. So I'm gonna cut that out, place it dead center in the middle of the cell, and then sew all the way around so my cytoplasm and my cell will have a nucleus in it. All right, so here we are now at my sewing machine. Pretty fun video going back and forth between the table and my machine. And I'm simply just gonna turn it on. This is probably one of the easiest shapes I'll do. It's not threaded. Why would it be threaded? Put my presser foot down. I'm gonna sew really as close as possible to the edge of this. And I'm actually going to use the zigzag stitch on my machine. That'll just keep the edges of my nucleus and other organelles from fraying over time as best as possible. And ta-da! We've got a nucleus in our cell. Oh, it's so cute! Okay, next part of our cell is going to be the endoplasmic reticulum, or ER. And this actually has 2 parts to it. One is the smooth ER and one is the rough ER. The rough ER has proteins on it, that's what makes it look rough, while the smooth ER doesn't. They have 2 different functions, and think of the ER as basically like the factory and shipping part of the cell. The rough ER creates proteins, while the smooth ER creates lipids and other carbohydrates the cell needs. But then they package those and ship those to other places in the cell. So this one looks like a little, speaking of tubey things, these ones look like a little tubey thing. So I'm gonna take my yellow fabric here, again, do whatever color you want. And I'm gonna just cut out like, how do I wanna do this? I'm gonna cut out how I feel like, I'm gonna cut some of my own fabric. Just gonna cut out what I feel like the endoplasmic reticulum wants to vibe to be. All right, so now that I'm satisfied with the way my endoplasmic reticulum looks, I'm going to pin it down to where I want it surrounding my nucleus and then sew it just the same as before. All right, I now have an endoplasmic reticulum, or ER, attached to my nucleus. Oh my god, this is so much cuter than I was imagining it to be. And now I want to distinguish between the rough ER, remember, which makes proteins, and the smooth ER, which just makes lipids and carbohydrates. So to do that, I'm going to take some embroidery floss, and I'm gonna make some, oh my gosh, brain blank, French knots, there we go, on what is going to be, that is not an embroidery needle, what is going to be the rough ER. And the rough ER is rough because it contains another cell organelle called the ribosome, which we'll talk about in a second. And ribosomes make proteins. So the rough ER has ribosomes all over it, and those make the proteins. So I'm gonna take some embroidery floss here and use it to make a French knot. All right, and for those of you who don't know what a French knot is or how to do one, and you're trying to follow along with this and would like to know how, I can show you real quick how I do my French knots. Okay, so to do our French knots, thread your string, tie a knot in the end of it, and bring up your needle where you want the French knot to be on the fabric. Pull it all the way through, and then you wrap your thread around the needle a certain number of times. I feel like I'm blocking this. I'm gonna try 5, so 1, nope. Let's see, can I get this closer? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you're gonna put the needle back down in the fabric right next to where you pulled it back up. If I can get a pull on my needle. And bam, you've just made what is quite honestly not a great French knot, but you've just made a French knot. And then you repeat that 20 billion times to practice. So I'm just gonna dot my area of my rough ER with some French knots. And the number of times you wrap the thread around the needle, or how thick your thread is, or your embroidery floss, is going to change kind of the size of your French knots. Oh my gosh. All right, so we put our ER, rough and smooth, onto our cell. So time for the next organelle. Now, if the ER is the factory and shipping part of the cell, the Golgi bodies are the post office of the cell. They take stuff that is made and comes from the ER and packages it and ships it out to all other parts of the cell where it needs to go. So I'm gonna cut out the Golgi body out of this purpley fabric. And this is gonna be another tubey blobby boy, which is gonna be super fun to sew. So I'm gonna probably put it maybe around this part of my cell, kind of near the ER, near the nucleus, just like I said, post office of the cell, another kind of blobby network of tubes that send stuff. All right, so I got my Golgi body piece looking the way I want to, so now it's time to sew it on. Ta-da, Golgi body. All right, I promise, this is the last tubey blobby thing we have to sew on. From now on, it is all circular blobby cells, organelles. All right, now it is time for the cell organelle you've all been waiting for. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell! All right, we all know that. We all love it. We love to say it. We love to meme it. What does that actually mean? The mitochondria basically takes all of the food that the cell gets or that you consume, and under a series of chemical reactions turns it into energy. When we say the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, it means it's the one creating all of the energy that the cell runs off of. I thought it would be really fun to use some pineapple fiber for the mitochondria because the mitochondria takes food and it turns it into energy, and pineapple is a food. that I like to turn into energy. Different cells will actually have different types of mitochondria, not different types, different number of mitochondria depending on how much energy they need. So if you think about like a muscle cell needs, like a muscle cell, your muscles have a lot of energy in them, working really hard. They're gonna have a lot more mitochondria in them than, let's say, like a fat cell, which I think is super cool. Different cells have different numbers of organelles, they have different functions. One cell, we're making a generalized animal cell here, but there are so many variations of it that just do so many things. So I'm gonna cut out, let's just cut out 2 mitochondria. We don't wanna overcrowd our cell. We still have, I think, 3 more organelles to go after this. I'm gonna cut out 2 mitochondria here, and they're just kind of ovally in shape. Well, now that they're small, you can't really tell they're pineapples, but we know. And I am going to put them on where I want them. Maybe one here, maybe one there. Pin them down and sew them on. Ta-da! Our cell is now a powerhouse. We got our mitochondria on there. It's looking so cute. And next we are going to do the lysosomes in the cell. So the lysosomes are, imagine them like the garbage disposal of the cell. They're breaking down old cell parts, they're breaking down some waste. They're basically removing and destroying all the cell junk the cell doesn't want anymore. I thought this one would be fun to cut out some shark fabric because, you know, they're chewing up all the stuff that the cell doesn't want anymore and get rid of it. So lysosomes are another circular blobby cell organelle. So I'm just gonna cut out a few circular blobby pieces of shark fabric. And then we'll sew those on and give our cell some lysosomes. All right, now we have some lysosomes. Now our cell can get rid of all of its old cell parts it doesn't want anymore. And next, we're gonna create the ribosomes. Now, I would call the ribosomes like the bros of the cell, right? I think you would think, maybe the mitochondria would be the bro of the cell, but the ribosome is the one making the protein. So the mitochondria can bro out all at once, while the ribosomes are like, bruh, you wouldn't even know what protein was if it weren't for me. So the ribosomes make the proteins, and again, are what is also on the rough ER. And if you were gonna be really coordinated about this, you would have picked some fabric or thread that we're gonna mash from the ribosomes we have on the rough ER to the ribosomes we're gonna put in the cell, but I don't have time for that. So I'm gonna cut out a couple of circular pieces. I'm gonna cut out, let's do 2 for my ribosomes. And these guys, again, remember, use RNA that comes from the nucleus to make proteins. And proteins are super important for all life. Proteins helped, oh my goodness, I can't even think of what proteins do, and I know this. Proteins can act as signal receptors to have cells communicate with one another, carry messages to tell the cell what to do. Proteins are incredibly important. All right, I'm going to attach, no, I want one of my ribosomes over here too. I'm gonna attach my ribosomes onto here with my pins, and let's get to sewing. And then our ribosomes, our cell, can now make proteins. All right, now we're on to our last cell organelle, which is gonna be the vacuoles. The vacuoles are basically the closets or the storage units of the cell. It can store water, food, waste, other toxic substances to the cell. It just stores stuff, and it often can change function depending on what the cell needs it to do. Animal cells have smaller several vacuoles, which is a big difference from plant cells, where plant cells have one big vacuole. Again, animal cells have several smaller vacuoles. So I'm gonna cut out some more blobby circles out of this fabric that, if you can tell, is a dinosaur print fabric. It's pretty fabulous. This is left over from a project where my friends and I made, or not my friends, my friend, I do have more than one friend though. One of my friends and I made matching dinosaur skirts because what else are you supposed to do with your friend if not make matching dinosaur skirts? All right, circular blobby vacuoles have been cut out, and it's time to attach them and sew them. And then it's gonna be time to put our cell pillow all together. All right, we have our vacuoles sewn on, and this makes the front part of our cell pillow all complete. All of the organelles are here. This is now a functioning cell. Also, it is way cuter than I imagined. And I'm contemplating whether or not I want to add eyes to it. I'm gonna go ask my husband if I should add eyes to this, and see what he thinks. And then I'll be right back, with or without eyes. No, wait, I'll have eyes. My cell may or may not have eyes. And then we'll put the rest of it together. See you in a second. All right. I'm back. We're asking my husband whether or not I should add eyes to this. He was not helpful, but I want to add eyes to it, so I'm going to. So the way I'm going to add eyes is hopefully through these craft eyes I have, which you can buy at like Joann's or Michael's or online. I bought them in a huge set from Amazon. And these work by, basically you just will cut a hole into your fabric, stick them through, and then this is my bag of backs, and you just put a back on the back of the craft eye and it locks it in there. If you don't have those or don't want to use them, you can cut out like a little piece of black fabric and sew it on there the same way as we sewed the organelles to the cytoplasm as well. So I'm gonna put my eyes in the nucleus because that's where I feel like they want to go. He is now a pirate. He only has one eye. Just kidding. I'm gonna add in the second eye. Trying my best to kind of align them and kind of space them apart where I want them to be. Stick that second eye in, and now I'll have the fun fight of putting another cap on. Did I use eyes? He's so cute. Okay. The next is we now have to attach, I'm so sorry, he's so cute. We now have to attach all of the parts together and actually turn him. It's a him. I just love how when you give something eyes, it immediately has personality. So now I have to turn him into a actual pillow. So let's get back our cell membrane pieces we cut out earlier. Remember, that was one of our circular boys. And a strip of our fabric, of our same fabric. And what we have to do is basically pin this fabric to all the way around the edge. That's right. Yeah, we basically have to pin this fabric all the way around the edge of our circle so that there's going to be our circle and then a row of fabric sticking up. What I like to do is kind of lay it out and pin it, and this strip might not be long enough, so if you end up having a strip that's not long enough, just cut out another one. I like to lay it all out first, and then eventually we will have to connect them, but we're gonna do it at the end. So first I'm just gonna start out by pinning all of this down and seeing how long this strip is and whether or not I need any more fabric. And that should just start. The fabric I'm using doesn't necessarily have a direction to it, or like a wrong side or a right side. It looks very similar on both sides. But if you are using a fabric that has a wrong side and a right side, so like one side looks more vibrant than the other side, then you want to make sure that you're putting the right sides of the fabric together. So this would be the right side of my fabric facing up, and this side right here that's facing down is also the right side of the fabric. That is one of the first rules in sewing, is when in doubt, right sides together. So of course my fabric is just shy of where I need it to be. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut out a strip that is the same width, that's just long enough to bridge this gap, and sew it basically to both ends of my fabric to form one complete loop of fabric around here. All right, so after a few mistakes, a little bit of seam ripping, and let's be real, a sewing project doesn't involve some seam ripping, we have achieved our goal, which is we have the ring of fabric all around the circle, and if I were to fold it out the other way, we would have the beginnings of dimensionality to our pillow. Woohoo! So it's gonna be the back. Remember, this is a cell membrane surrounding the cell, and now we have to attach, whoopsies, this piece to it to make it the full pillow. This will probably be the hardest part, but together we have the strength to do this. So we want to fold it so our ring and our circle pieces are back where you can see all of the seam showing, so the wrong side facing out. And we're going to place our cell body facing downwards, and I didn't cut an exact circle, so I have to kind of figure out exactly which kind of messed up non-circularly shaped way this is supposed to go. I think kind of this way. It's good enough if it's not. And we're gonna have to pin this to the top of this ring. So to do this, basically you should have one side of this out. So this is, remember, the right side of our fabric. This is the right side of our cell piece. And we're just going to pin them together as such. And I'm gonna go do this all the way around, trying to match up the edges even as much as possible. Now, because I cut these out of two different fabrics and I didn't pin my pieces down, and it was a very rough chop, let's say, the pieces are probably not gonna be exactly the same shape and size. That's okay. Just try your best to match up the sides, and if it's a little bit uneven, it'll still work out, I promise. All right, this is all pinned together and it's time to sew. It kind of looks like this. Now, when we sew this, we're gonna sew all the way around this outer edge. It's important to remember two things. One, you need to leave a gap big enough to turn the pillow right back, right side in again, and a gap that's also gonna be the same gap we fill with stuffing. And make sure when you're sewing, you don't actually accidentally trap any other parts of the fabric in your seam, or else you're gonna have to undo it, and that won't be fun. So let's sew this bad boy up. All right, it is all sewn up, and what I like to do before I turn it right back side out is to make sure that I have sewn on both sides. So I can see the stitching on here, it doesn't leave my maroon fabric at all, and the stitching on here doesn't leave my plaid fabric at all. So now I gotta find my gap that I know I left in this, right here, and reach inside, and let's see what this looks like. Ta-da! Here's our pillowcase we're gonna stuff. Oh my gosh, it's looking so cute. All right, I lost my bag of polyfill here. Got a giant bag of polyfill. You can buy this at Walmart, Michael's, Joann's, anywhere. And we're basically just gonna take this fluff and stuff it inside of our pillow. Oh, he's so cute. Until he is the proper size we want him to be. All right, I think he is as full as I want. He's so cute. Okay, so next we have to basically sew up this gap. But we're gonna have to hand sew this. So the best way I know kind of how to do it is you want to fold in your fabric to the match how folded in your fabric is for the seams, and kind of put them together, and then you're gonna sew kind of between this part to sew it up. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. If you want to watch a much better tutorial than I can give you, go look up how to do a ladder stitch, because I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. Me trying to show you how to do this will end badly. I'm terrible at it. But I believe in your ability to do better than me. So I'm gonna stitch this guy up, and I will see you when he's all finished. here's the finished product. He is so cute and I love him so much. Hopefully you enjoyed watching today's video and learning more about cells and their organelles, and also how to make a really adorable cell pillow. I do keep calling him a him, and I have decided to name him Robert. You may be wondering why Robert. That's actually after Robert Hooke, who is the first person to observe and name cells. And that leads me into today's fun fact to rate. That is that Robert Hooke, when upon observing cells, decided to call them that because he thought they looked like little rooms or cells in a monastery. So please drop that rating for that fun fact in the comments below. Tag me in any post if you too decide to make an animal cell pillow. Like and subscribe, follow me on Instagram, all those good things. I post on every Tuesday and Friday. Keep it sciencey. Nice. I like the idea that a cell would have a closet. I feel like a cell almost feels like a closet. It's got closets inside of closets. I told you, cells are all just tubey blobby things and circular blobby things, and I was not lying. But please don't write that on your exam if you are a student using this video to study in any way, shape, or form. Your teacher will not give you points for it. Come on. Come to mama. Oh, this is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever made. I love it.